Pokemon! Gotta catch 'em all! Pokemon is a series that's been around with Nintendo for about 3 decades now. What started as a simple RPG on the Game Boy became one of the biggest mass media franchise of all time. Everyone and their grandmother knows what Pokemon is. If you're not playing the games, you're also doing the trading cards or watching the anime. Years ago when I was living in a different state, me and my cousins used to watch a lot of Pokemons and go a lot through the trading cards and such. I even have this cool little booklet full of Pokemon cards. And also, if you're wondering, my favorite Pokemons are Psyduck, Lucario, and Greninja. But despite how big of a gaming franchise Pokemon is, it is never really a strong suit to home console games before the Nintendo Switch. Now, there has been plenty of Pokemon games that were released on home consoles, but it's mostly spin-offs. Usually a lot of times, Pokemon's big main titles are usually on the portable device a lot of times. Which is honestly a good fit considering like the main idea of Pokemon is trading Pokemon with others and such. That and Pokemon is mostly Nintendo's biggest handheld seller. But during the N64, Nintendo decided to try and expand the Pokemon series to home consoles. Not with an RPG, but a bunch of small spin-off titles. So I thought it'd be fun to just take a look at all 6 of the Pokemon games that released on the N64. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So usually when it comes to videos like these, I usually like to take them in order by release. But for this video, I think it would be a better idea just to do them a certain way. So for the first game we're going to be talking about is Pokemon Stadium. On the offset, it seems to be like a traditional Pokemon game but in 3D. However, this is not necessarily an RPG game, kind of like the main games. It's more of a turn-based strategy game, where basically you go through various cups and such and pick the Pokemon that would be best suited for the battles. And I should also mention is that originally there was another version of this game that released in Japan a few years before this game released, but short to the point, this game is pretty much like a beta version of the final game we got in the US. Because compared to this game to the final one, this one feels very, very incomplete. With the one biggest issue with this one is that you can only use about 40 Pokemon instead of 150. But with the final Pokemon Stadium game we got in the US, they pretty much got all the Pokemon from the Kanto region in this game. Meaning that you'll be able to pair a lot of your main Pokemon in the Kanto region in this game. And honestly, for their first ever 3D outing, the battles of this game are honestly pretty impressive. There's even full voice acting in this game, which is very surprising, and the fact that they were able to cram all this in an N64 cartridge is really, really impressive. And that's not even talking about the main gimmick of this game. So essentially, for Pokemon Stadium, they have this little peripheral you can put on the N64 controller. Doing this, it pretty much allows you to play the Pokemon you have in your Game Boy into Pokemon Stadium. Essentially, if you pick up a friend who also has a copy of Pokemon, you can also have a Pokemon battle using the Pokemon in your games in full 3D. And the coolest thing is that Nintendo kept this gimmick when they released Pokemon Stadium for the Nintendo Switch. And it's not surprising considering that during the 3DS days, they were able to import this little feature to the virtual consoles where you can transport the old games into the new one. And I'm only lying because that would be cool, but they really didn't. Nintendo, please stop drip feeding us these goddamn games. Even without the Game Boy player, you can still play with most of the Pokemon. It's just that it's going to be very limited compared to using an actual cartridge that this game was supposed to use. And luckily, just because you have a rental Pokemon doesn't mean like it's going to be a lot harder compared to a Pokemon you already have. It just means that you're going to have less freedom of what moves a certain Pokemon can do. And the moves that they choose for certain Pokemon has been odd.
It's supposed to be a duck, but you know, I definitely see the argument for a platypus. And what the fuck is Psyduck doing with Dig?
Wait,
That's
Psyduck
my
has
question.
Dig in its
What
rental?
the-
Nidoking can't learn. Nidoking cannot learn Dig, but a fucking duck can learn Dig.
But yeah, overall the battle system in this game is really good. I love how very lively the Pokemon feels in this game, although some of the animations could be a bit weird sometimes. Like, holy crap, what the f happened to Venusaur right here? However, keep in mind, this is still just the tactical turn-based part of Pokemon. There is no RPG elements in this game, so if you're looking for a more traditional RPG Pokemon, Pokemon Stadium isn't really the game. It's more of a multiplayer game to play with friends and such, especially with the other modes in Stadium, like the Mario Party mode. These mini games are kinda lame. They're not really bad per se, they're just really not that markable. You're better off playing something like Mario Party. However, there are some mini games I do like in this game, like the Lickitung one where you're trying to get as much sushi as you can. And every time you eat a certain type of sushi, you'll get a special combo. But the rest is just pretty much very simple button mashy kind of thing. And also the Clefairy one freaking sucks. And as for Pokemon Stadium 2, well, this is pretty much more of the same, but there's a lot more content in this game, and the minigames are completely new, and honestly better. I was honestly going into this game thinking it's just going to be more of the same, but while it is somewhat, it's honestly a bit better and more refined. Especially with brand new minigames, which is honestly a lot better than anything from Pokemon Stadium 1. So out of these two games, I highly recommend trying Pokemon Stadium 2. It's pretty much more like Pokemon Stadium 1, but you get the Johto Pokemon and a lot better minigames. Now, Pokemon Stadium is probably the most you'll get out of like a traditional Pokemon game on the N64. Because for the other Pokemon games on this console, they are completely different genres and spin-offs. So for the next Pokemon game, we have Pokemon Puzzle League. And before I start doing this section, I think it would be very funny to look at the commercial in this game because, wow.
Do you have the skill? Do you have the speed? Do you have the coordination to be Pokemon Puzzle Master? Do you have what it takes to face your toughest opponent yet? The Wall. New Pokemon Puzzle League pits you against 16 trainers in Pokemon's biggest challenge of them all, the Wall. Can you master it? A legion of Pokemon say you can. New Pokemon Puzzle League rated E for everyone, only on N64.
Now this game is somewhat interesting development-wise. So unlike the other Pokemon games on the N64, this game was not made in Japan. Instead, it was made by Nintendo's North American team, Nintendo Software Technology. Now this is one of Nintendo's more smaller studios to help with co-developing a lot of games. They're also the one that made the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series on DS and such. And lastly, this is the only Pokemon game I can think of that never released in Japan. This is a US and PAL region only. So yeah, Pokemon Puzzle League is pretty much a pretty small puzzle game. And as you can see in the title and box art, Ash is present in this game. Which is something that's very weird because Ash has always been exclusive to the anime series, so to see him on an actual game back in the day is kinda cool. I honestly say try this game out if you're very curious and you really like puzzle games. It's honestly a really good time just to melt your mind into. But this game in particular is probably the most popular one out of the lineup in this video. This is the very first N64 game for Pokemon that released in the US, and it's probably the most cult classic Pokemon game of all time.
Today's assignment, photograph the elusive Pokemon. How do you do it? You're gonna be fast. Ah! You need a keen eye, the best equipment, and lightning-quick reflexes.
No, you don't. All you need is Pokemon Snap, the first Pokemon game for N64. Find them, frame them, and shoot. You can even bring your Snap cartridge to a participating Blockbuster video and print out stickers of your favorites.
Doesn't look like they're coming out today. Hard luck.
Pokemon Snap, gotta catch them.
Pokemon Snap. Now this game was developed by HAL Laboratories and released in 1999 and the early 2000s. This game is an on-rail first-person shooter where you're playing as a photographer taking photos of several Pokemon in the wild. This game is divided by 6 sections with a final 7th one if you complete the criteria. So the main goal of this game is to take photos of Pokemon, but it is even important goal to make a good photo of a Pokemon. So in the game, you'll have various items to use to help get a good photo, like apples, this little smoke bomb, and a fluid to wake up sleeping Pokemon. The better posing and position the Pokemon is, the more points you'll get. Especially when you find the very secretive Pokemons in this game, like a Charizard where you need to push a Charmeleon to freaking lava for it to evolve. And I've got to say, I really love the environments in this game. This has to be the first time Pokemon actually felt very lively instead of just like a video game world. It feels like you're actually traveling through a world where Pokemon is just living at peace and such. There's just something very calm and relaxing about this place. And the music in this game is surprisingly really good. I really love the upbeat tune to this. And there's a lot of secrets you can do in this game to get more points, which is always nice. One of my favorite things to do in this game is to use one of the Squirtles as a Koopa Troopa to knock a Mankey off a mountain. That way you can find a secret path where you can find Professor Oak. Here he explains that he's looking for certain areas where you can find a sign that looks like a Pokemon. Although it makes you question because the first thing you do when you enter this area is find a giant Dugtrio mountain. And it kinda makes you question because how in the hell did they miss this? It's a giant mountain. But yeah, when I first booted up this game, I really didn't see the appeal, but the more I played it, it just clicked with me. Honestly, out of all the N64 Pokemon games, this is the one I'm gonna go back to the most. I mean, it has a freaking balloon Pikachu right here! This is definitely an S-tier Pokemon game. And I now see the fully justification of making a direct sequel to this game for the Nintendo Switch. Even though I feel like the sequel would have been better on the Wii U for the gamepad. So yeah, that was Pokemon Snap, and now for the final game on this video. So this game is Hey You Pikachu.
Pikachu, let's play. Pikachu, dance.
I can't take it anymore.
Reel it in.
He talks to Pikachu, Pikachu listens.
Pikachu, come here.
I thought I was man's best friend.
Great job. Pikachu.
Meanwhile, I'm getting fat. I walk myself. Where's the love?
Hey You Pikachu, rated E for everyone. Good for you, bad for pets.
Looking for love here.
Okay, so as you see in the commercial, this is not a normal N64 game. Instead, this is a special peripheral game that uses an N64 mic, or most commonly known as the VRU. This kind of equipment was also set with a Pikachu-themed N64 bundle, which is pretty much Pikachu slapped on top of the N64 with the cartridge slot slightly off-centered. However, trying to record footage for this game turns out to be a really pain in the butt, because unlike the other games here, I emulate them via the N64 Online or Project 64. However, for this one, it is not possible to play with either of them without the N64 mic, and you can't use a special add-on for the emulator for Project 64, so I only had one solution. I forked over $50 and bought the whole thing. And after playing 30 minutes of this game, and I've got to say, this game sucks. So the main gameplay is that you play as this kid who's playing with Pikachu daily, and in order to communicate with Pikachu, you'll use the N64 mic. And I'll give it credit, the mic somewhat works okay. And honestly, I see this game kind of appealing to those who are in preschool and such, but this game is just very boring. You're just walking around with Pikachu, him interacting with various objects, and see what happens. I wish I could say more about this game, but that is the main idea of this game. You just hang out with Pikachu. At least the environments of this game looks pretty good, and it's cool to see this game running at 60 FPS somewhat. But yeah, I do not recommend playing this game at all, and I feel like I wasted a lot of money, but at least there's no game that came out right. And that was Pokemon for the N64. And overall, that was a pretty solid lineup for Pokemon's first outing on a home console. These games may not be the most mind-blowing games you can think of, but they're still pretty fun. And honestly, at their best, they're probably the most charming Pokemon games in the series. Pokemon Snap is the definite highlight, because this is just a really fun and charming little game. And as for Pokemon Stadium, while I do feel like it kind of falls a bit flat in some aspects, like the minigames, for what it is, to play like your Game Boy Pokemon games in 3D, it's honestly a really cool idea. And if Nintendo ever releases the original Pokemon games on Switch, I hope they reenact this little gimmicky thing for the Pokemon Stadium game on Switch. So if you're very curious on these games, I highly recommend trying them out on the N64 Online. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye!